The Grand Nexus station floated in the dark space between 3 solar systems, its massive structure glowing with lights from 100 different worlds. Ships of every shape and size docked at its ports, bringing delegates from across the galaxy to the most important meeting of the year. Captain Lisa Grant pressed her face against the small window of the human transport ship, watching the station grow larger as they approached. "First time seeing something this big?" asked Ambassador Paul Carter from the seat beside her. He was a tall man with graying hair who had spent most of his life dealing with alien politics. Lisa shook her head and smiled. "I've seen big things before, but nothing like this," she said. "How many species will be there?" 47 confirmed, maybe more," Paul replied, checking his datapad. "The annual Galactic Resource Summit brings everyone together. Well, everyone who matters in this part of space. Lisa had never wanted to be here. She was a soldier, then a wildlife expert who spent her time in Earth's forests and mountains. But when the Galactic Council asked Earth to send someone who understood hunting and conservation, her name came up. Paul had convinced her that humanity needed someone who could speak about these things with real knowledge. The docking process took 20 minutes. When they finally stepped off their ship, Lisa felt the artificial gravity pull at her slightly differently than Earth's. The air smelled clean but strange, with hints of gases that human noses were not meant to detect. Everywhere she looked, she saw beings that would have been impossible just 50 years ago. A group of tall, blue-skinned creatures with 4 arms walked past, speaking in musical tones. Behind them floated something that looked like a cloud of glowing gas, somehow contained in a loose energy field. Near the information desk, a being made entirely of living crystal was having an animated conversation with what appeared to be a collection of insects moving as one mind. "Stay close," Paul whispered. "And remember, try not to stare." Most of these species consider it rude. They made their way through the station's corridors, following signs in dozens of languages. The human writing was small and placed low on the signs, reminding Lisa just how new her species was to this galactic community. Earth had only made contact 15 years ago, and they were still considered the new kids trying to prove they belonged. The conference room was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up so high it disappeared into shadows. Hundreds of seats were arranged in a rough circle, each designed for different body types and needs. Some delegates sat in chairs, others floated in energy fields, and a few seemed to prefer standing in shallow pools of liquid. Lisa and Paul found their assigned seats in a section marked for newer species. Around them sat representatives from worlds that had joined the galactic community in the last 50 years. Across the room in the prime seats with the best view, sat the older and more powerful species. "There," Paul said quietly, pointing toward a group of large reptilian beings. "Those are the Zephyrians. They control mining rights on 17 worlds and have the strongest military in this sector. Their leader is War Commander Vextar." Lisa studied the Zephyrian delegation. Vextar was easy to spot. He was the largest of his kind in the room, standing nearly 8 feet tall. His scales shifted color from deep green to dark red as he spoke, and the crest on his head glowed with a soft blue light. 4 powerful arms gestured as he talked to his assistants, and his voice carried clearly across the room, even when he was speaking quietly. "He doesn't look friendly," Lisa said. "He's not supposed to be." The Zephyrians believe that strength is the only thing that matters. They've built their entire culture around being the perfect hunters and warriors. Most species here treat them with a lot of respect, and some are frankly afraid of them. A soft chime filled the room, and all conversation stopped. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display activated showing the agenda for the day. Lisa read through the list of topics, noting that Earth's proposal was 3rd from the bottom. Not a good sign for something important. The first few hours of the meeting were boring. Lisa listened as different species argued about trade routes, mining quotas, and territorial disputes. She began to understand why Paul had brought her. Most of the discussion centered around who had the right to take resources from which worlds, and how much they could take before it became harmful. When Earth's turn finally came, Paul stood and activated their presentation. The holographic display showed images of Earth's forests, oceans, and wildlife preserves. He spoke about sustainable hunting practices and the importance of maintaining ecological balance on newly discovered worlds. Humanity proposes the establishment of protected zones on all newly surveyed planets, Paul said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. These areas would be off-limits to large-scale resource extraction, allowing native ecosystems to remain intact while still permitting controlled, sustainable hunting for those species that require it. Lisa watched the room's reaction. Some delegates seemed interested, nodding or making approving sounds in their various languages. Others looked bored or confused. But when she looked toward the Zephyrian section, she saw something that made her stomach tighten. War Commander Vextar was laughing. It was not a pleasant sound. The Zephyrian's forearms shook as his body rumbled with amusement, and the glowing crest on his head flashed brighter. Other members of his delegation joined in, their scales shifting to colors that Lisa somehow knew meant mockery. Paul continued his presentation, but Lisa could see that he had noticed the Zephyrian reaction too. His voice remained steady, but she caught the slight tension in his shoulders. When he finished and sat down, scattered applause came from various parts of the room. But the Zephyrian section remained silent except for occasional sounds of amusement. The meeting moved on to other business, but Lisa found it hard to concentrate. She kept glancing toward Vextar, who seemed to be having a wonderful time making jokes with his delegation. Every few minutes, one of them would look toward the human section and make a comment that caused more laughter. During a break, Lisa and Paul stood near the refreshment area, which offered food and drink suitable for dozens of different biological systems. Lisa sipped something that tasted like cold metal while Paul reviewed his notes. "I think that went well," he said, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. "The Zephyrians didn't seem impressed," Lisa replied. Paul sighed. "No, they didn't. But their opinion isn't the only one that matters. We just need to show the other species that Earth has something valuable to offer." As if summoned by their conversation, War Commander Vextar approached their area. Up close, he was even more intimidating than Lisa had expected. His scales were scarred from what looked like dozens of battles, and his eyes were the color of molten gold. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "The humans and their conservation," he said, making the last word sound like an insult. "How very interesting." Paul straightened and offered a diplomatic smile. "War Commander Vextar, I hope you found our presentation informative." "Oh, it was certainly that," Vextar replied. His crest flashed with amusement again. "Though I confess I am curious about something. Your species speaks of hunting as though you understand it. Tell me, humans, what exactly do you know about the hunt?" Lisa felt every muscle in her body tense. She had spent 12 years in the Marine Corps, and another 8 as a wildlife expert. She had tracked everything from mountain lions to poachers through some of the most difficult terrain on Earth. But looking up at this alien war commander, she realized that her credentials might not mean much in this room. Paul opened his mouth to respond, but Vextar held up one of his 4 hands to stop him. "No, Ambassador. I would like to hear from your hunting expert." "That is why she is here, is it not?" All conversation in their area stopped. Lisa became aware that several other delegates had moved closer, sensing that something interesting was about to happen. The moment stretched out and she realized that everyone was waiting for her response. "I know enough," she said simply. Vextar's golden eyes glittered with what might have been anticipation. War Commander Vextar straightened to his full height, towering over Lisa and Paul. His golden eyes studied Lisa with the intensity of a predator examining prey. Around them, more delegates had gathered, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The crystalline architect beings chimed softly to each other, while the insectoid hive mind representatives moved closer as one unit. "You know enough," Vextar repeated, his voice carrying a tone of mock consideration. "How fascinating. And what exactly has your soft little species hunted that would qualify as worthy prey?" Lisa felt Paul's hand touch her arm gently, a warning to be careful. She knew he was right to be concerned. Earth was still new to the galactic community, and making enemies of powerful species like the Zephyrians could have serious consequences. But something in the alien commander's tone reminded her of every arrogant officer she had ever served under, every poacher who had dismissed her expertise, every person who had underestimated her because of how she looked. "We've hunted what we needed to hunt," she said calmly. Vextar's crest flared brighter, and several other Zephyrians moved to stand behind him. Lisa noticed that each of them bore similar scars to their commander, marking them as experienced warriors. Their scales shifted through different shades of red and orange, which she was beginning to recognize as signs of aggression or excitement. "What you needed to hunt," Vextar said, and this time his laughter was loud enough to echo through the chamber. "Oh, this is rich. Tell me, little mammal. What prey could possibly challenge a species that requires artificial weapons to kill anything larger than itself?" The room had grown very quiet. Lisa was aware that dozens of alien eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs were focused on her. She could see Paul's reflection in a nearby crystal formation, and his face showed clear worry. This was exactly the kind of diplomatic incident he had been hoping to avoid, but Lisa had made her decision. "You seem to know a lot about human hunting methods," she said. "Why don't you tell everyone what you think you know?" Vextar's forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have been theatrical on a human, but looked genuinely threatening coming from him. "Very well. I shall educate this gathering about the pathetic hunting practices of Earth." He began to pace in a slow circle, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Lisa noticed that even delegates who had been engaged in their own conversations were now paying attention. "Observe the human hunter," Vextar began, gesturing toward Lisa with one of his lower arms. "First, note the complete absence of natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venomous spines. Their skin is soft and easily torn. Their bones break under moderate pressure. They have no armor plating, no natural camouflage, no ability to survive in hostile environments without artificial aids." Several delegates made sounds that Lisa assumed were agreement or interest. The hive mind's representatives clicked their mandibles in unison, while one of the floating gas cloud beings pulsed with different colors. "But surely," Vextar continued, "such a weak species must have developed exceptional speed or stealth to compensate." He paused dramatically. "No. Humans are among the slowest species on their own world. They are easily detected by most prey animals. They cannot fly, they swim poorly, and they are nearly blind in darkness." Lisa felt her jaw clench, but she forced herself to remain still. Paul's grip on her arm tightened slightly. "So how," Vexitar asked the room, "does such a pathetically equipped species manage to hunt anything at all?" He stopped pacing and fixed his golden eyes on Lisa. "They cheat." The word hung in the air like an accusation. Lisa heard one of the architect beings chime in what sounded like surprise. "They use tools because they are too weak to kill with their own bodies," Vextar continued. "They hunt in groups because individually they are powerless. They use fire because their bodies cannot withstand natural temperatures. They track prey with artificial devices because their senses are inadequate. Every aspect of human hunting is a confession of fundamental weakness." Lisa watched as some of the other delegates nodded or made approving sounds. The Zephyrian commander was making a compelling case, she had to admit. From a certain perspective, everything he said was technically true. Furthermore, Vextar said, warming to his subject, humans are so inefficient at hunting that they require elaborate preparation before they can even attempt to kill prey. They must study their targets for days or weeks. They must set traps and create artificial advantages. A true predator simply sees prey and takes it. One of the gas cloud beings pulsed a question in a language that sounded like musical tones. Vextar's crest brightened as he answered. "An excellent question. Yes, humans are so poorly designed for hunting that they often fail entirely. Their prey escapes and the humans must return home empty-handed. Imagine the shame of it. Predators who regularly fail to catch prey because they lack the basic capabilities required for the hunt." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not anger exactly, but something quieter and more focused. She recognized the feeling from her time in the military, when an enemy had revealed their position by talking too much. But perhaps the most telling evidence of human inadequacy, Vextar said, his voice rising with theatrical emphasis, is what they call conservation. They speak of protecting prey animals and limiting hunting activities. What predator limits itself voluntarily? Only one that lacks the confidence to hunt properly in the first place. The room erupted in various sounds, some that might have been laughter, others that seemed like agreement. Lisa saw Paul's face pale as he realized how badly this was going for Earth's diplomatic position. Vexitar raised all forearms for silence, and the room gradually quieted. When he spoke again, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I have personally hunted the apex predators of 17 different worlds," he announced. I have killed creatures that could tear apart starship hulls with their bare claws. I have tracked beings that can phase through solid matter and stalked prey that can manipulate gravity itself. I am a true hunter, as are my people. He turned to face Lisa directly, his golden eyes gleaming with confidence. So tell me, little human, with your soft skin and blunt teeth and primitive tools, what makes you think your species understands the first thing about the hunt? The challenge hung in the air like a physical presence. Lisa was aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every slight sound in the enormous chamber. Dozens of alien species waited to hear how Earth's representative would respond to this public humiliation. Paul's grip on her arm had become almost painful, but she gently removed his hand and stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. War Commander Vextar, she said, would you be interested in a practical demonstration? The room went completely silent. Vextar's crest dimmed slightly as if he had not expected this response. You propose what exactly? He asked. Lisa looked around the chamber, meeting the alien gazes that were fixed on her. She thought about her years in Earth's wilderness, about the things she had learned from tracking wolves and bears and mountain lions. She thought about her ancestors who had walked across continents with nothing but stone tools and cunning, who had survived ice ages and droughts and every challenge their world could throw at them. I propose, she said simply, that you let me show you what human hunting actually looks like. Vextar's forearms crossed over his chest, and his scales shifted to a deep, dangerous red. And what form would this demonstration take? Lisa smiled for the first time since the conversation began. It was not a particularly pleasant expression. Your choice, Commander. Pick the prey, pick the location, pick the rules. I'll show you why humans don't just hunt. We are the hunt. The silence that followed was so complete that Lisa could hear the soft hum of the station's life support systems. War Commander Vextar stared at her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, his mouth opened to reveal rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. How interesting, he said. How very interesting indeed. The biodome section of Grand Nexus Station was unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. It stretched for miles in every direction, its ceiling lost in artificial clouds that drifted slowly across a fake sky. Trees from dozens of worlds created a patchwork forest, while streams of different colored water wound between hills and valleys. The air was thick with humidity and filled with sounds from creatures she could not identify. This is where we keep specimens from various worlds, explained Dr. Kellen Hayes, the station's chief biologist. He was a nervous human who had been working on the station for 6 years. We use it for research and sometimes for diplomatic demonstrations. Though nothing quite like this has ever been attempted. Behind them, a crowd of delegates had gathered to watch the spectacle. The viewing area was protected by energy shields that could stop anything short of a starship weapon. But Lisa noticed that several species had positioned themselves near the emergency exits anyway. War Commander Vexitar stood at the center of the viewing platform, his forearms crossed and his golden eyes bright with anticipation. His crest glowed a steady blue, which Lisa had learned indicated confidence or satisfaction. The rules are simple, Vextar announced to the gathered delegates. The human will enter the biodome with only primitive weapons. She may hunt any creature she chooses or attempt to hunt the creature I select for her. She has until sunset tomorrow, roughly 18 of your standard hours. Paul stood beside Lisa, his face pale with worry. You don't have to do this, he whispered. We can find another way to make our point about conservation. Lisa shook her head. No, we can't. Look at them. She gestured toward the assembled delegates. Half of them think humans are a joke, and the other half are afraid we'll embarrass ourselves so badly that they'll lose respect for Earth entirely. This is our chance to show them who we really are. Dr. Hayes pulled up a holographic display showing the biodome's current inhabitants. Creatures great and small moved through the artificial wilderness, some grazing peacefully, others stalking through the undergrowth with predatory intent. Most of our specimens are not particularly dangerous to beings of your size, he said. We have some mid-level predators from various worlds, but nothing that should pose a serious threat to someone with military training. Vextar's crest flashed brighter. Oh, but doctor, where would be the educational value in that? He stepped forward and pointed to one of the creatures on the display. I believe the human should hunt that one. Lisa looked at the image and felt her mouth go dry. The creature was called a Catherian shadow stalker, and it looked like someone's nightmare made flesh. 12 feet long from nose to tail, it moved on 6 powerful legs ending in claws that could probably cut through metal. Its hide seemed to shift color as she watched, providing perfect camouflage against any background. That specimen has killed 17 beings since it arrived here, Dr. Hayes said quietly. It's considered one of the most dangerous predators in this sector of the galaxy. Perfect, Vextar said with satisfaction. Surely such a capable human hunter will have no trouble with a simple animal. Lisa studied the creature's movements on the display. It was clearly intelligent, using cover effectively and moving with the calculated patience of an apex predator. Its eyes tracked movement with laser focus, and she could see the powerful muscles bunched under its shifting hide. "What weapons am I allowed?" she asked. Vextar gestured dismissively. "You said primitive weapons. Choose whatever your ancestors would have used before they developed technology." Lisa nodded and turned to Dr. Hayes. "I need a wooden spear, about 8 feet long, a knife with a 6-inch blade, and access to your maintenance areas." "Maintenance areas?" Dr. Hayes looked confused. "Your ancestors were scavengers," Vextar said with amusement. "How fitting." 20 minutes later, Lisa stood at the biodome's entrance wearing simple clothing and carrying her requested weapons. The spear was straight and well-balanced, tipped with a sharpened metal point. The knife hung at her belt in a leather sheath. In a small pouch, she carried items she had gathered from the station's maintenance sections: wire, adhesive patches, a small mirror, and several other objects that had drawn curious looks from the watching delegates. "The Shadow Stalker has been released into Section 7, Dr. Hayes informed her through a communication device attached to her collar. "That's the forested area near the eastern stream. It should be hunting smaller prey and establishing territory." Lisa looked up at the viewing platform where dozens of alien faces stared down at her. Vexitar's golden eyes gleamed with anticipation, while Paul looked like he was about to be sick. Some of the other delegates were making what she assumed were bets on how long she would survive. "Any final words of wisdom from the great human hunter?" Vextar's voice echoed through speakers placed around the biodome. Lisa hefted her spear and smiled. "Just one piece of advice, Commander. You might want to pay attention. This could be educational." She stepped through the entrance and the energy barrier sealed behind her. The biodome was even more impressive from the inside. The artificial sun felt warm on her skin, and the air carried the rich sense of growing things mixed with the musk of animals. Birds or bird-like creatures called from the trees, while something large crashed through the underbrush in the distance. Lisa found a small clearing and knelt down, placing her hands flat against the soil. It was real earth, imported from various worlds and mixed together. She could feel the slight vibrations of moving creatures through the ground, and the dampness told her where water sources were located. For the first hour, she did nothing that looked like hunting. Instead, she walked slowly through the forest, stopping frequently to examine plants, check the wind direction, and study the tracks of various creatures in the soft earth. The delegates watching from above grew restless, and she could hear Vextar making comments about human timidity. But Lisa was not being timid. She was learning. Every forest had its own rhythm, its own patterns of behavior. Prey animals moved in predictable ways based on where they found food and water. Predators positioned themselves to take advantage of these patterns. The Shadow Stalker would be no different. It was an animal, following instincts that had kept its species alive for millions of years. She found the creature's first kill site after 2 hours of searching. The remains of something that looked like a cross between a deer and a lizard lay scattered near a stream. The kill was fresh, and the way the bones were cracked told her about the Shadow Stalker's jaw strength and feeding habits. More importantly, the tracks around the kill site showed her how the creature moved. It was heavy, leaving deep impressions in the soft earth near the water. It favored its right side slightly, suggesting an old injury, and it was methodical, circling its prey multiple times before striking. Lisa spent another hour following the creature's trail, not trying to catch up with it, but learning to read its behavior. She found 2 more kill sites and discovered that the Shadow Stalker was establishing a territory roughly 3 miles across, centered around the largest freshwater pool in this section of the biodome. As the artificial sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lisa finally began to hunt. But she was not hunting the way Vextar expected. She was not tracking the Shadow Stalker through the forest like some primitive savage with a pointed stick. Instead, she was doing something far more sophisticated, something that showcased the true terror of human hunting methods. She was learning to think like her prey. Lisa positioned herself near the Shadowstalker's favorite hunting ground and began to wait. Not the passive waiting of someone hoping to get lucky, but the active patience of a predator who understood exactly what was going to happen next. Above her, the delegates settled in for what they assumed would be a long and boring vigil. Several had already left, convinced that nothing interesting would happen until morning. War Commander Vextar remained at his position, his golden eyes fixed on the small human figure barely visible through the trees. "Enjoying the show so far?" Paul asked quietly. Vexitar's crest dimmed slightly. "The night is young, Ambassador. We shall see what your hunting expert can accomplish when faced with a real challenge." In the forest below, Lisa Grant smiled to herself and continued to wait. She had all the time in the world. Dawn came slowly to the biodome, artificial light gradually brightening to mimic a natural sunrise. War Commander Vextar had remained at his viewing position all night, his golden eyes tracking the small human figure moving through the forest below. Around him, other delegates had come and gone, but many had returned as word spread through the station that something unusual was happening. "She has not even attempted to engage the Shadowstalker," observed one of the crystalline architect beings, its voice chiming like broken glass. "Perhaps she cannot locate it." Vextar's crest pulsed with dim amusement. "More likely she has realized the futility of her situation. Humans may be stubborn, but they are not completely stupid." Ambassador Paul Carter stood nearby, his face showing the strain of a sleepless night. He had watched Lisa move through the biodome with growing confusion. She had not behaved like any hunter he had ever heard of. Instead of pursuing her prey, she seemed to be gardening, because that was exactly what Lisa was doing, though none of the watching aliens understood it yet. Throughout the night, she had worked steadily across the Shadowstalker's territory. Using her knife and pieces of wire from her maintenance kit, she had created dozens of small changes to the environment. A branch bent here, a rock moved there, a stream temporarily diverted with carefully placed stones. To the casual observer, nothing looked different, but Lisa was not making casual changes. Every modification served a specific purpose in a plan that was becoming clearer with each passing hour. She had found the Shadowstalker twice during the night, watching it from a distance as it hunted smaller prey. The creature was magnificent, 12 feet of perfect predatory evolution. Its color-changing hide made it nearly invisible, and it moved with the fluid grace of something born to kill. But it was still just an animal, driven by the same basic needs as every other predator she had ever studied. As the morning progressed, Lisa's plan began to take effect. The small diversions she had made to the stream system started to dry up the Shadowstalker's preferred watering holes. The bent branches and moved rocks created subtle barriers that funneled smaller prey animals away from the creature's usual hunting grounds. "What is she doing?" Dr. Hayes asked, studying his monitoring displays with growing confusion. "The environmental sensors are showing changes throughout Section 7, but nothing dramatic enough to trigger our safety systems." Paul watched Lisa work and slowly began to understand. "She's not hunting the Shadowstalker," he said quietly. "She's hunting the entire ecosystem." Above them, the delegates were growing restless. Several had made comments about human cowardice or incompetence. Vextar himself had begun pacing, his forearms gesturing impatiently as he spoke to his fellow Zephyrians. "Perhaps we should end this charade," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The human has clearly realized she cannot face a true predator." But Lisa was far from finished. As the artificial sun reached its peak, she began the second phase of her hunt. She started by making noise. Not random noise, but carefully calculated sounds that she placed at specific locations throughout the forest. A branch snapping here, rocks falling there, the splash of something entering water at exactly the right moment. To the Shadowstalker, these sounds would seem like prey, animals moving through its territory, except every sound was designed to drive the creature toward a single location, the large freshwater pool at the center of its range. The Shadowstalker responded exactly as Lisa had predicted. Hungry and thirsty after a night of unsuccessful hunting, it began moving toward the sounds of potential prey. But every time it investigated, it found nothing. The mysterious prey animal seemed to stay just out of reach, always moving toward the central pool. Fascinating, said one of the gas cloud delegates, its voice like wind through crystal. The human appears to be manipulating the creature's behavior without direct contact. Vexitar's crest dimmed as he watched Lisa work. For the first time since the demonstration began, he looked uncertain. Lisa spent the afternoon refining her trap. She used the small mirror from her kit to reflect sunlight, creating flashes that startled smaller animals and sent them fleeing in predetermined directions. She spread scent markers made from crushed plants, creating false trails that confused the Shadowstalker's tracking abilities. Most importantly, she began closing off escape routes using fallen logs, carefully placed stones, and her own tracks. Lisa created a maze of barriers that would funnel the Shadowstalker toward the pool, while making it difficult for the creature to retreat. To anyone watching from above, it looked like random forest clutter, but every obstruction was positioned with mathematical precision. "She's herding it," Paul said with growing amazement. "Like shepherding sheep but with a 12-foot killer." By late afternoon, the Shadowstalker was showing signs of stress. Its usual hunting grounds had been disrupted, its water sources had changed, and strange scents and sounds filled its territory. The creature's color-shifting hide now flickered between patterns more rapidly, indicating confusion or agitation. Lisa watched from concealment as the Shadowstalker approached the central pool for the third time that day. The creature was learning to associate this area with the mysterious disturbances in its territory, but it was also desperately thirsty. The other water sources had been systematically blocked or contaminated with unfamiliar scents. The Shadowstalker circled the pool cautiously, its 6 legs moving with predatory grace. Its head swiveled constantly, searching for threats or prey, but fatigue and thirst were beginning to affect its judgment. Lisa had been tracking the creature for over 20 hours now. She knew its preferred approach routes, its reaction times, and its behavioral patterns. More importantly, she knew exactly where it would position itself when it finally decided to drink. She was waiting there when it arrived. The Shadowstalker emerged from the underbrush at exactly the spot Lisa had predicted, moving with the careful steps of an animal that sensed danger but could not identify its source. Its color-shifting hide rippled through shades of green and brown as it tried to blend with the surrounding forest. Lisa struck from above, dropping from a tree branch where she had been waiting for 2 hours. Her spear took the creature through the neck in a single, precise thrust, severing the major arteries and dropping it instantly. The watching delegates erupted in various sounds of surprise, amazement, and approval. Several species that had been dismissive of human capabilities now looked at Lisa with something approaching respect. But War Commander Vextar remained silent, his golden eyes fixed on the small figure standing over her kill. "Remarkable," Dr. Hayes said, checking his instruments. "The entire hunt took just over 26 hours, and the actual kill was accomplished in seconds." Paul felt a mixture of pride and relief wash over him. She did it. She actually did it. In the forest below, Lisa knelt beside the Shadowstalker's body and placed one hand on its hide. Even in death, the creature was magnificent. She had taken no pleasure in killing it, but sometimes demonstrations required dramatic endings. She looked up at the viewing platform and saw dozens of alien faces staring down at her. Some showed admiration, others confusion, and a few displayed what might have been fear. But it was Vextar's expression that interested her most. The Zephyrian War Commander's crest had dimmed to almost nothing, and his forearms hung at his sides. For the first time since she had met him, he looked uncertain. Lisa stood and picked up her spear. The demonstration was over, but the real lesson was just beginning. She had not simply killed a dangerous predator. She had shown the galactic community something they had never seen before. What happened when humans decided to hunt seriously? And judging by the silence from the viewing platform, they were finally beginning to understand what that meant. The conference room was completely silent as Lisa walked back into the chamber. She had cleaned herself and changed clothes, but she still carried her wooden spear. The delegates watched her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright fear. Many species that had been talking loudly before were now speaking in hushed whispers, if they spoke at all. War Commander Vexitar stood at his delegation's position, his forearms crossed over his chest. His golden eyes followed Lisa as she made her way to the center of the room, but his crest remained dim. Several other Zephyrians clustered around him, their scales showing colors that Lisa had learned indicated uncertainty or concern. Ambassador Paul Carter waited near the human delegation's seats. relief clear on his face. Dr. Hayes stood beside him, still looking amazed by what he had witnessed in the biodome. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of worlds waited to hear what the human would say about her demonstration. Lisa stopped in the center of the room and planted her spear on the floor, letting it stand beside her like a staff of office. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the translation systems to every corner of the vast chamber. War Commander Vextar, she began, looking directly at the towering Zephyrian. Yesterday you asked me what humans know about hunting. You made several statements about my species that I would like to address. Vextar's crest flickered slightly, but he remained silent. You said we use tools because we are weak, Lisa continued. You're wrong. We use tools because we can imagine things that don't exist yet and then make them real. Every species in this room has tools now, but humans were using them before we had language, before we had fire, before we had any of the things you consider signs of civilization. She gestured toward the various delegates around the room. You said we hunt in groups because we are individually powerless. Wrong again. We hunt in groups because we understand that shared knowledge is more powerful than individual strength. When one human learns something useful, all humans can learn it. When one of us solves a problem, all of us know the solution. One of the crystalline architect beings chimed a question. Lisa nodded in its direction. You want to know about the Shadowstalker hunt? That creature was a perfect predator, fast, strong, intelligent, and nearly invisible. In a direct fight, it would have killed me easily. But I didn't fight it directly because that's not what humans do. Lisa began to walk slowly around the chamber as she spoke, her voice calm and educational. What you witnessed wasn't primitive hunting. It was the most advanced form of predation in the known galaxy. I didn't just hunt one animal. I turned an entire ecosystem into a weapon. Every tree, every rock, every stream became part of my trap. The gas cloud delegate pulsed with colors that indicated confusion. Lisa smiled and addressed its unspoken question. You're wondering how this is possible. The answer is simple. Humans don't just adapt to environments, we change them. We don't just learn animal behavior, we manipulate it. We don't just track prey, we predict where it will be and make sure it goes there. War Commander Vexistar finally spoke, his voice rumbling through the chamber. You speak of manipulation and prediction as though they are hunting skills. These are the tools of cowards who cannot face their prey honestly. Lisa stopped walking and turned to face him directly. Commander, honest question. How many species has your race driven to extinction? Vextar's crest flared slightly. We are warriors, not exterminators. We take what we need and leave the rest. That's admirable, Lisa said. How many species has mine driven to extinction? The question hung in the air. Paul shifted uncomfortably, knowing where this was leading. I don't know the exact number, Lisa continued when no one answered. But it's a lot. We didn't mean to do it most of the time. We were just so efficient at hunting that we killed entire species without even trying. A murmur ran through the chamber as the implications began to sink in. The Shadowstalker is one of the most dangerous predators in your sector of space, Lisa said. I killed it in just over a day, using weapons that my ancestors made 50,000 years ago. Now imagine what happens when millions of humans spread across a planet, each one capable of that level of environmental manipulation. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat and spoke up. Captain Grant, are you saying that humans are accidentally genocidal? Lisa nodded grimly. We're so good at hunting that we had to invent the concept of conservation, to stop ourselves from destroying everything we touched. We became apex predators on our world so completely that we had to learn to protect our prey from ourselves. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gazes of delegates from dozens of species. Commander Vextar called our conservation efforts a sign of weakness. He was wrong about that too. Our conservation efforts are proof that we became too successful as hunters. We got so good at killing that we had to develop ethics just to leave something alive. The hive mind representative clicked its mandibles in what sounded like a question. Lisa nodded in its direction. You want to know about persistence hunting. That's when humans track prey not by being faster or stronger, but by being more determined. We follow animals for days or weeks, never letting them rest, never letting them recover until they collapse from exhaustion. Then we kill them. Several delegates made sounds of distress or amazement. But even that's not the scary part, Lisa continued. The scary part is that we do this on a species level. When humans decide we want something extinct, it becomes extinct. When we decide we want something to survive, it survives. We've become the ultimate predators not because we're the strongest or fastest, but because we can outthink anything else alive. War Commander Vextar's scales had shifted to deep purple, a color Lisa had not seen before. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. You are saying that your species chooses what lives and what dies across entire worlds. On our world, yes, Lisa replied. And soon on any world where humans live. Not because we're evil or because we want to control everything, just because that's what apex predators do when they get smart enough to understand what they're doing. She picked up her spear and held it vertically beside her. This is a piece of wood with a metal point. My ancestors used weapons exactly like this to hunt animals that could crush them with a single bite. They didn't do it because they were brave or because they were desperate. They did it because they could imagine the hunt before it happened, plan for every possibility, and then make their imagination real. Lisa looked directly at Vextar as she delivered her final point. Commander, your people conquer worlds with superior technology and military force. My people? We turn entire planets into hunting grounds without even meaning to. You use weapons to kill your enemies. We use ecosystems to kill our prey. You fight other warriors and call it honor. We accidentally destroy entire species and call it Tuesday. The chamber had become so quiet that Lisa could hear the soft hum of the air circulation systems. Earth's proposal for conservation zones isn't about protecting prey from predators, she said. It's about protecting the galaxy from us. Because if we don't actively work to preserve the things we hunt, there won't be anything left to hunt. War Commander Vexitar stared at her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then slowly, he uncrossed his forearms and stepped forward. Captain Grant, he said formally, I believe my people may have underestimated your species. Lisa smiled, but it was not entirely pleasant. Most people do, Commander. We've found it's usually better that way. The vote on Earth's conservation proposal was unanimous. After the session ended, Vextar approached Lisa privately. His crest was dim, and his scales showed colors she had learned indicated respect mixed with wariness. Captain, he said quietly, would Earth consider sharing some of its hunting knowledge with other species? For educational purposes, of course. Lisa looked up at the towering alien warrior and nodded slowly. We'd be happy to teach anyone who wants to learn, Commander. But the first lesson is always the same, which is learning when not to hunt at all.